Right, good evening. My name's Simon Lovesey, the founder of Restart Sailing. I'm joined by John Emmett.
Hi, yes, I'm John Emmett. Really pleased to be here. Hopefully, going to give some people some things to think about during these difficult times. And before I forget, it's a little bit late, but happy Christmas. You probably can't really see from the screenshot, but I have my Christmas jumper on for its one time a year.
All right, well,
Uh,
John, did you not get the memo? Christmas was one day?
well, 12 days of Christmas, and I think every cloud has a silver lining. So hopefully, some people will have had the opportunity for a nice time with their families.
Yes. So back to the three stages. This is a bit like a yo-yo, I think, isn't it? We started off with our aggressive social distancing, and then we moved to the moderate self-distancing, and I think probably in the summer we got to the all the way to the right, didn't we, John? With some
Yeah,
international
we
events going.
we did at one point. I mean, the big international event in 2020 was obviously in Japan, and they had their second wave in June, and the games didn't happen, and Japan is now back closed to foreigners at the moment. So yeah, we do seem to have gone a little bit full circle, but people are, or at least some people are able to sail, where there was points early on the year where nobody could do anything.
Yes, and I think there's been more recognitions of the importance of exercise and mental well-being, isn't there? So originally nothing was allowed, wasn't it? And I think we're seeing more pragmatic and a more common sense approach, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's been some learning experiences. Now, normally at this stage of the show, I'll just give a quick resume of the day's new cases and the number of deaths, so people have an idea where we are. But because a lot of the home countries don't actually record data on the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, the numbers we have at the moment aren't really a fair representation. So we're going to get a very large numbers on the 29th, and then I guess there'll be a decision about what goes on moving forward, probably on the 30th. But for people who are looking at home, I just suggest you look at a 7 day rolling average. Otherwise, it tends to make things look much better or much worse than they really are on any given day. But especially over this the festive and New Year period.
Yeah. So interestingly, there was meant to be sort of an announcement about the schools today, but other than a staggered rollout, it seems not much change.
Yeah, well, it seems there's obviously a bit of heated discussion between the Education Secretary and the bodies with the schools. I mean, one thing which crossed my mind is maybe it's better for secondary school students to be in a controlled environment, like a school, rather than actually the possibility of them all being together outside in a completely uncontrolled environment. It's a really difficult thing, and I just feel very sorry for people who are in education who, when they were studying to be teachers, I'm sure they didn't realise they were going to be having to manage these very difficult situations. And my heart does go out for people who are meant to be having exams in 2021.
Yeah.
My
But certainly
goddaughter
there
was.
was that discussion. I heard that as well about it's actually better to have them in a controlled environment rather than sort of roaming around and under control. And I think that's
Yeah.
also one of the arguments for things like sport, isn't it? That if you sport is a controlled sort of activity, and it may be safer to be controlled rather than out of control.
I've actually always said in terms of coaching sailors, probably especially, we should probably do more training and less competition, because until you've got your boat handling and everything really sussed, you can do that stuff close to home. But on the family front, I feel sorry. My goddaughter was intending to go travelling for a year, and I think you couldn't really pick a worse year looking back. But it
Yes,
is what it is.
yes. So the Facebook group Restart Sailing, and well over 2,000 members. You always know when something's happening because it lights up, doesn't it? Sometimes
Yeah, and
ahead of the announcements, you see sort of suddenly
yeah, I mean,
hundreds
I
of
think
posts.
it's been so useful that there's lots of people out there posting useful information, because one or two individuals would never pick things up as quickly as a group. And actually, I think it's very good to have things out in front of the announcement, because it gives people a little bit more think time. I mean, we've said that unfortunately January is a bad month for respiratory diseases. We know the situation, and therefore people are hopefully a little bit mentally prepared for what may happen over the next couple of weeks, couple of months.
Yeah, but it's great to see the sailing community supporting itself, and I think you can see quite a lot of collaboration going on between clubs and classes, and good practice being shared. I think it's bringing out the best, I think, in the community.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of some of the things which have come out of this. I mean, for me, online WhatsApp briefings for the coaches makes so much sense, rather than a major championships trying to crush 200 bodies into one space, all trying to hear what the race officer shouting.
Well, that's right, and we tried some of these ideas for Dutch Flyer a couple of weeks ago, and things like the WhatsApp announcement is actually much more effective getting through than PA systems where no one can hear at the back end of the car park, can they? And I think some good will come out of it, and let's hope some of these innovations stay with us and people don't revert back to some of the other stuff.
From a coaching perspective, actually, these sort of environments, people seem more willing to ask questions than they are in a face-to-face, not wanting to literally stick their hand up. Whereas it online or remote, or it seems to get better.
We saw that with the Dutch Flyer briefing. We had well over 100 people attending, and got a good flow of questions from people who wouldn't normally put their hand up. As you say, it's a bit of an equaliser, isn't it? Much more inclusive than he who shouts loudest or she who shouts loudest in the briefing. It gives everyone a chance to get things through. So I think,
well, my phone is now full of the telephone numbers of the various PROs. Whether they want that or not, I'm not sure. But that's what's happened this year.
Data protection, John. Right. So moving on. So December, 4 tiers. I think Boxing Day even more, wasn't it? I think
they couldn't spoil Christmases. Well, I think when you come to the map, I think that shows things really clearly. But the thing for me is, I think the word lockdown is it's quite emotive now, having been through it a couple of times. Whereas Tier 4 doesn't seem to have the same connotation, but it still hopefully achieves what they're setting out to achieve.
Yes,
and things that shouldn't be restricted hopefully aren't now, and vice versa.
Yes, I think unless you look carefully, Tier 4 is the lockdown that we had a few weeks ago, isn't it?
By another name.
by another name. But importantly, I think exercise is in there. That's good. For sailing point of view, I think it's informal, no organised sort of activities, whereas Tier 3 that really allows racing, I think, isn't it? I probably can't read the details on that, but restricted in terms of travel. But I think under Tier 3, there's a lot of sailing you could do. Tier 4, it's back to the casual, informal sailing, no real racing, no organised racing. But hopefully we don't get to the situation as we got with the lockdown, where the clubs were literally locked down. I think that was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it was a great shame where you had clubs which were literally going right onto a public beach or whatever, and they felt that they couldn't let their members sail. But when we look back, we'll see that was probably quite a short period of time. I mean, in terms of travel, when you look what it was like this weekend and you see the snow and the ice coming, probably it's quite a good idea to stay local anyway for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of clubs will also close down over the winter. So hopefully there is sailing available for people who want it, but not everybody will feel the great miss. I mean, I sailed today, and I was actually, the most enjoyable part of today was getting in the hot shower after. But hopefully it'll make me sail faster next year.
Yeah, but hopefully with Tier 4 that clubs will be allowed to open. Obviously not clubhouses, but we won't get the situation if it's not public land you can't open. That was a bit of an anomaly, I think, in the rules.
Well, I think people will be reluctant to hang around and chat afterwards and risk getting too close in social distance anyway. I think it's quite conducive for people to turn up, go sailing, get changed, go home, but at least they get sailing.
So this is what it looked like really from the 26th. A lot of us now going into Tier 4. You see it's sort of crept east, but interestingly, the north has stayed lower tiers, tier three, whereas
because they had the restriction early on. I mean,
yeah,
that's what we've seen all the time. And my theory is better to lock down sooner rather than later, just to see things in the big picture. And I'm sure the beginning of part of next year, unfortunately, we're going to see an even larger percentage of the UK in that dark. I don't know what colour we would call it, but that tier four colour.
yeah, not quite black, but it's
Yeah. So stand by for that announcement. But
heading there. But interestingly, we've lost most of tier one. I think the Isles of Scilly are tier one. I think that was
yeah,
some of
don't
Scottish.
broadcast it. I have a few friends who live on the Isle of Wight who were quite upset that it was broadcast. They were tier one, and everybody came over to visit, and they went from tier one to tier three
Tier
very
three, yes.
quickly.
I think we had a bit of tourism going on, didn't we?
Unfortunately,
And that is the problem with neighbouring areas. I mean, we got into tier four here on the Hampshire South Coast. I think that was the same thing, that people popping over from tier four next door in Gosport and Portsmouth, and it just goes there. You can see that spreading. But we will know
Cornwall's
more.
going to close its border.
more later. Right. So moving on. I think,
You're on, Ed.
we got
Hello.
Ed Presley.
Yeah, there we go. Unmuted.
Yeah. So
You can hear me all right, guys, can you?
yeah. So Ed, you're in tier three. I think we worked out earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, we've been in tier 3 for as long as the last change. My sailing club is in tier 2, but I'm not supposed to be travelling to it, so I've not been down to Castle Cove for a little while. I'm sat just outside Bath, so I'm now in tier 3, which is a shame.
Yeah, but that area was in tier three, wasn't it? Or Bristol?
Bristol was, but south of Bristol was in tier 2.
Yeah.
But the last change brought us into tier 3. But there's some very close tier 2s to us, but we shouldn't really be travelling. So
I think Castle Cove is now more or less shut until the 11th of April.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, we don't. It's right. I'm not considering going down there because I think the club itself is shut. But for many reasons, you can't go sailing at Castle Cove at the moment if you're living here where I am.
Yes.
So what would be good? I'm sorry, my short-term memory for the next slide would be good to talk about what the Contender class did do this year and a bit about the organisation. I think you got 3 events in and relatively large events, all things considered, and how you achieved that.
Yeah, so we had a full calendar, I guess the same as most classes. It's a calendar put together by myself and a few others. And we go to a mixture of big clubs and small clubs. And we started the year quite early in March and managed to get one in just before the first lockdown at Datchet, which then we had that period straight away where there was nothing happening and everything got cancelled. And I think most of the clubs the whole calendar got cleared. But as we navigated our way through the summer, we realised that we could pick up a few of those stragglers and reorganise the events. So we managed to get an event at Weston, which is a big club for contenders. There's a lot down there, and they were excellent in the way that they managed to organise an event for us during the period that was slightly eased in lockdown. And then just at the end of winter, we managed to get an inlands at Oxford Sailing Club at Farmore, which again was under lockdown conditions, but during the period where you could travel, and as long as we didn't hang around in the clubhouse, we were safe. And then we've gone into this latest period, so we missed. I mean, we have a schedule of 10 to 12 events, and I think we missed 8 of them, including our international events, which is the big thing about the Contender is that it's sailed all over the world. So missing out on our 50th year this year at Medemblik was the big disappointment. We also didn't get to do our nationals, which we had planned for Porthpean down in Cornwall, which is always a great place to go sailing. So those were losing the big events is really difficult. I feel like given a window of a couple of weeks, we could organise an open fairly easily.
So that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, I mean the class is pretty tight. We know where everyone is. We can get the message out due to social media and things like that quite quickly. We know the clubs that can quickly turn these things around and are willing to do that and are looking forward to hosting us. So I think given enough positivity, to get the numbers up and make it worthwhile for the clubs, we'd be able to turn the events around. It's what we did at Weston. It's what we did at Oxford.
So those are clubs which are quite easy to get to and with a large launching area.
Yes.
And large boat park. Just for people thinking, what is the bare minimum requirements to be able to do the Open? And the first thing, obviously, is the most important thing. You said, you need that will there, that desire to make it happen. But yeah, it's a large boat park, large launching area, which just keeps people separated.
Yeah, and clubs that are run by volunteers just give you a strong signal whether it's something they want to do. We're not having to twist their arm, and whether or not their area and their local authority finds it acceptable. And I think we'll be the same for the early part of next season as well. We've got a diary full, but we're quite aware that could change very quickly.
So Ed, in a perfect world, what does 2021 look like? In a perfect world.
Well, in a perfect world, the first thing that happens is we go to Germany to Warnemünde week and have our World Championships, which is the first week of July. I mean, that's the focus this year. This is the first year the Contender since 1970 hasn't had a world champion. Wow. So that's been a big miss for us. Second to that, we're going to Plymouth for the Nationals in September. Now, I'm pretty hopeful by September we should be fine, but let's not let's not even consider it. And after that, just getting as many Opens in as we can. So we start again in March. Now, I understand they're pretty at risk, but we will keep pushing on those and stacking them up towards the back end of the season. So ideally, we get 10 Opens, a Nationals, and a World Championship in for 2021, and that'll be all of our normal events.
I mean, for me, in terms of Europe, I think Germany's very good. I did quite a lot of international work this year, and Kiel set the bar very, very high. After a while, everything seemed normal, and it certainly seemed very safe. To start with, first 2 or 3 days, it seemed very different, but it was perfect. So I think Warnemünde, I would imagine, would be exactly the same.
And I'm not expecting the club to have a problem. It'll be more about international travel, getting across the channel, getting across borders.
You're not going to stay there for more than 90 days, are you? I know you want to be well prepared, but you should be okay.
Well, it's still sailing Contenders. Nobody's going to be that well prepared. Yeah, I mean, we don't practice in the way that you guys practice. This is a nice off season. That's the way we're viewing it. We'll be back in the summer, slightly overweight.
Right. So, moving on. So, this was due to be getting towards the midpoint of the Selden Selges Winter Series. We've had one event, so,
which is infinitely better. Doing pure statistics here, it's infinitely better than 0 events.
Right, yeah, let's be positive. So we were due to kick off with the Draycott Dash in November, but then came the lockdown. But that's been rescheduled. And then we had the Datchet Flyer coming in just after the lockdown. We managed to get that in, a record sort of entry with 130 boats. But unfortunately, events have overtaken us. What was the Yorkshire Dales Brass Monkey then became the Burfield Brass Monkey, which has become the Tier 4. So that didn't happen over the weekend or yesterday. Instead, Andy Rice and I hosted a very good look back at the winners. I think we had about 8 winners on there, from Nick Craig and Ian Dobson and Simon and Katie, the current winners, all sort of looking back. So that's well received. So as we said, we do something. So the schedule now is sort of some of the events. We hope to run the Burfield Brass Monkey on the 20th of February, and then the Draycott Dash the 6th to 7th of March, and then slotted another one in Alton, 27th and 28th of March, becoming the Spring Series. And Andy and I sort of had a bit of a joke yesterday that we could keep postponing until next winter, so we could get it in and then start the winter again. It's, we are trying, and there's a unprecedented interest in people out competing, and hopefully we'll get something in. I think January's looking not too good.
No, I mean January's never looking good at the best of times for, for sailing, dare I say it, because it's sort of respiratory illness and normal flu and all the rest of it. But the good thing with face masks and so on, at least we don't seem to have had that double whammy of having a high flu season as well. But
yeah, so more people were vaccinated, weren't they? So I think that's hopefully kept them away. Right, so moving on. I think,
yeah, that segues really nicely. I was talking about the winter season because I think the Selden Selju series, I mean, it does a fantastic job at sort of bringing the people together who are super keen to be sailing that time of year. And it's a terrible shame about what's happened in the 2020 and 2021 season. I mean, if we look ahead, one of the most common questions is when are things going to be normal, and I think it's almost impossible to define normal. But for those people who follow the group, I did post up a slide which shows when herd immunity should be delivered from vaccine source. So, for example, September, touch wood, that looks pretty good because it looks like they hope to complete the rollout in the UK by August, but certainly all the way up to April when when the clocks change and stuff, it does look it's not looking fantastic. So we just have to cross fingers and toes for those events, and it's not going to be a binary thing where you flip a switch. So traditionally, this is where people put a bit of weight on, as Ed said. I was going to encourage the use of a home gym rather than leftover eggnog and mince pies or whatever it is. But to try and use your time. I mean, if you are going to be doing the winter season training, and I do understand with the tier systems, maybe technically you have to be exercising on your own, but I would still very much encourage a buddy system. So you sail at the same time as somebody, and you probably tell your wife when you're going and when you're coming back, and have a phone and a radio, or preferably both, with you when you're on the water, because it's not like breaking a mast in July where you can sit around in 20 degrees. If it's minus degrees due to wind chill, you do need to think about safety. So maybe that home gym is becoming a little bit more attractive. I'm not going to do any exercises here to demonstrate in the confines of my little box I have here. But if you think about what you would do going to a gym, you can replicate that in your home, and that way you're possibly not mixing with 40 other strangers in a relatively confined space. So I guess Techno Gym and those companies that deliver to home probably going to be doing quite well over January. And I was thinking, you may have the opposite problem, or we may have the opposite problem, Simon, that the 2021-22 season may be really oversubscribed if everybody can suddenly sail as normal in sort of December, January, February, and you'll find even the largest of clubs may be struggling to get people.
Well, yes, we saw that over the summer, didn't we? I think it was just a surge to go sailing. I guess people couldn't go abroad. They had lots of time on their hand, and I think people are rediscovering sailing, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been good for people to realise that they did really miss it. But yeah, it's going to be a nice problem to have. But I think that's increasingly likely.
And the challenge for the sport will be to manage that sort of situation where lots of people want to go sailing, and if they can't get there, they may become sort of frustrated and go off and do other things. So
I think the first events we have will be very well attended. Certainly, the one or two events we have managed to get in the diary this year, we had a real interest, and lots of boats turned up for them simply because they were scarce. So I think when we first come back, you might find that you beat the open meeting entries that we normally get, and then as people get the opportunity to go on holiday again and go abroad, I suspect that'll tail off back to normal levels, but hopefully leaving behind a few people have rediscovered it.
Well, I think it will be, yes. I think people will perhaps think, well, actually, I can do it here. Why do I need to rush around and the risk of travelling? I think people will reassess things, hopefully.
I think it's like the last cookie in the jar. If there's a scarcity of something, it just looks so much more tasty. They actually do the experiment. They have 2 jars full of identical cookies, and if there's only 1 or 2 cookies in one jar, and the other cookie jar is absolutely full, even though they're completely identical cookies. Human beings, we go for the scarce jar.
Well, the
But
fear
I
of
think,
missing out.
travel will take a little while to equalise as well. And at the moment, travelling internationally and being tested and documents and stuff, it's not an overly pleasant experience.
Well, yes, and I think if you look at that chart that you shared about how long it's going to take, some countries are going to potentially take years, aren't they?
Yeah, well, what really worried me was Japan was looking at 16 months, which didn't sound very positive to me. But Restart Sailing is primarily about getting us all sailing in the UK, so we won't worry too much about that.
Yeah, but it actually has an
I think the
impact, doesn't
spectacle.
it? If people can't, if other countries are significantly behind us in terms of getting back to some sort of normality, people won't travel to them, or
Well, that's why I say to my goddaughter, probably not the best year to have a year out.
yeah.
I
And
try to say it in the nicest way.
yeah.
Probably study you can still do at home. It's not the best way to be in uni, but you can actually do it. Whereas, the travel is really not ideal, and people don't want to get stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the year with the lasers, I was encouraging people to get home from Australia as fast as they could, and they didn't really see the urgency until they did see it. you know.
Yeah. So
So
I
I
think
think
travel is going to be challenging for, well, several years. We probably get the scenario where some countries have opened up, but they're probably going to restrict the borders, I guess, if there's other countries still sort of with lots of infections.
I mean, the thing for me with Japan, I mean, obviously, I'm hopefully going to be working there, and I love the Olympics, and it's what I live for, and I'd love to be on the water there. But I do think that sort of thing, that spectacle, is just good for people's mental health. I just think just a bit of normality and something to look forward to, and hopefully Team GB will continue to punch well above their weight for population size.
John,
Yeah.
wouldn't the hopefuls that are expecting to go out to Japan, wouldn't they already be there though if this was a normal cycle? Would they not already be testing the water and starting to dial into those conditions and stuff?
I'm trying to think how to give a short answer. I mean, the RIA has done an amazing job at getting athletes out to every Olympic venue as soon as it's announced. At the moment, you physically can't get in Japan, but you wouldn't want to because the summer conditions and the winter conditions are so different. But as soon as we get into that sea breeze type scenario that hopefully we'll have for the games, the whole world is going to want to be there. Sort of, I won't give away too many secrets, but sort of May June time as soon as it kicks in. But a lot of people have done a lot of time there, and it's going to be interesting how it works out because at least in some ways, not being a spectator sport may make it seem more normal. Now, when I say not being a spectator sport, I think it's really good to watch, but the size of our crowds are not comparable to stadium sports.
Yeah.
And actually, I think if you watch things like the America's Cup, the TV footage, it's really good to understand what's going on. I nearly went off on a tangent about foiling there, but I'm gonna rein myself in. But how it works at the moment, I don't know whether there'll be a vaccine passport or the whole world goes in and quarantines for 14 days before. Hong Kong's just gone to 21 days. And at the moment, I'm just trying to get to Lanzarote, to be honest, because it's the same time zone as the UK, but it's got a lot more sunlight, so it's a lot warmer and it's got a lot more daylight. And we figure that the waves are a little bit closer to Enoshima than what we have in Weymouth Harbour.
There we go. Right. So some quite good interviews going on, John, I think.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I'm still learning with the interviews because I spent quite a few years doing interviews with a microphone which is, say, that big. And now, because of social distancing, it's a much larger microphone. So I seem to alternate between giving myself a beard and giving a beard to the person I'm I'm interviewing.
So is this a broom handle or?
Yeah, I actually bought 2 of them. That is from Amazon, a child's broom handle.
Oh, right.
Which seemed to be the most suitable size. But I did take it out to where would it have been? To Villamora, and I did tease Tula that this was primarily to improve sailing performance. And it was also something that I couldn't really take in hand luggage as well, my coaching stick. But when we did the sort of commentary type things for the RSX Europeans and the Grand Prix, they said it didn't look very professional, and they gave me a bit of carbon fibre. But that was even longer and even more problematic, to be honest. But there we go. The key thing, anyway, is the masks. And that just makes such a massive difference. And I do understand there's some genuine reasons that people can't wear masks, but for the vast majority of us, it's just something we have to do. You know, if you imagine that there was the person opposite you, you knew they had COVID, then I think you would put it on pretty quick to protect yourself. Or you think about, you know, firefighters who go into burning buildings, you think of frontline nurses, you think of people who were involved in the First World War with chemical weapons. Like, if you really need to do something, virtually all of us can do it. So I think the interviews, you can still just about understand what's being said, so it's all good.
yeah, they're really good. So this is Georgie, I think, isn't it? That was our latest interview.
Yeah, so she's in the 470. She had a unique set of. She obviously doing a two-man boat, and I think she's also joined Castle Cove and got herself a Scorpion. The Scorpion seems to be the boat of choice when you want to hike, and the Contender seems to be the boat of choice when you want to trapeze. And there's at least one individual who's got both, I guess, for Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings. But yeah, I wanted to talk to somebody who was almost ticking, you know, done the Olympic campaign and still campaigning. You know, she's been top 10 in Europeans. She's won I'm going to get it wrong now, won the 2018, this is off the top of my head, Radial Nationals. But she's also, you know, really pleased to do a bit of club sailing. Without encouraging the stalkers, I'm very jealous of where she lives, because it's such easy walking distance to both the sailing club and the local pub. I mean, I think it's it couldn't be better.
Yes. Right. Okay. So into the new year.
So this is not a complete reset for
restart
2021. Simon gave me the benefit of the doubt. That's a John Emmett typo. It should say show 19. I did correct it, but obviously not quick enough.
Come through,
but yeah, it will be the first show of 2021. So maybe I should have just kept quiet and pretended it was the plan all along. But there we go. That'll be recorded for posterity. Now, when you think about fit people, I think we can probably agree that international mountain climbers probably got a very good set of lungs on them. So when somebody who's been suffering, and I guess for the young people the text there is fine, but for older people like myself that's a little hard to read. But the long COVID, he said it feels like he's on the summit of Mount Everest. So really fit guy, far fitter than I am. And I think he'd be a great guest, because unfortunately around 10% of people who get COVID have ended up with long COVID. And for a reason that we're not quite sure of at the moment, actually athletes, it's a higher percentage, maybe just because their immune system's already, you know, taken a little bit of a battering from training or possibly overtraining. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to speak to Nick, because there's nothing like first-hand experience, and actually his job, he is a motivational speaker, so he'll definitely
and I think understanding these things helps. You know, sometimes we perhaps don't want to hear things, but the more we understand, perhaps the easier it is to deal with things.
Yeah, I think I think denialism is an increasing trend at the moment. In the long term, it doesn't do anybody any good. It's much better to see things as they really are. And hopefully one of the things, when you hear these stories, not only do you hear how people came through it, but maybe just to think about preventative measures, because actually prevention is always better than cure. And we can see the light in the tunnel. I know when people are talking about, you know, August next year, that sounds a long way away, but we're over halfway, guys. So I think probably now is a little bit of a time for patience and to be extra sensible, not to not to let go. We've seen this happen before in history. So yeah, and sailing, we're so lucky to do a proper outdoor sport. Your boat is outdoors. You go and rig it. You sail outdoors. You come back. If you're doing rowing, for example, your boats are kept indoors. But we're in almost the perfect scenario.
Mm.
Right. Okay. So I think that probably wraps it up until the 7th of January. I'm sort of losing touch how far that way is.
Well, it's not that far, but we figured that not that many people would want a live show on Christmas Eve. So I hope we've got the time. And then after that, I mean, it depends on the guests, but we should be on the regular fortnightly slot. So 7th and then 21st and so on. And quite a few people have expressed an interest in coming on. It's so good to talk to different classes, and it doesn't have to be, top racers like Ed at the front of the fleet. It can be, people who coach junior classes or race officials, or we just want to get everybody.
Class administrators, those involved,
Perfect.
those at the sharp end having to deal with some of these comings and goings, really.
If you're in the contender class, that's all the things that you do.
Okay.
I'm at the front and the back, and I'm the administrator, and sometimes the coach.
Many hats.
We'll have one in February again.
Right, okay. Well, we'll call it a wrap, and I think, wish everyone a happy new year, and we'll see you in the new year. Hopefully some more positives. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Right.